And ladies and gentlemen, we are live. It is Tuesday, June 20th, the great year 2023. And this is the Voice of the Reason podcast brought to you by Logitech Remote Controllers. My name is Sean Phillips. As always, I am joined alongside my co-host, Mr. Andy Van Beber and Travis Kirkendall. Gentlemen, how are we doing this evening?
Well, I don't know if I want to be remote controlled by anything Logitech makes right now. I mean, given the situation of those poor folks in that submarine.
You know, I think that's been aside from the death of at least 5 people, and hopefully they are found, the worst press that anybody's getting right now is Logitech. Like,
because
people are
controller.
Absolutely shitting on Logitech. Which, here's my thing. Travis might also be able to attest to this. I actually had a great relationship with Logitech growing up because whenever you needed a new PS2 controller, right, the PlayStation, the Sony brand was always like crazy expensive. But you know who came in clutch for about $9.99? Logitech. Logitech.
Were they the ones that made those?
Yes.
I know. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was Logitech had like they sold the alternate. Yeah. They sold the alternate like remote controllers for PC, and I'm fairly certain they did PlayStation 2 controllers as well. They definitely did like PC. I had a white Logitech PC controller for whatever, like I played PC games because I just wasn't good at the keyboard. But yeah, if anyone has been getting shit on, it is Logitech.
Oh my gosh, those guys are screwed. I watched a video of the I'm sure everybody has now of the of what the inside of that submarine looks like and how big. I mean, first of all, an 8-hour trip inside that little submersible is not happening with me, because one thing I have a hard time dealing with is claustrophobia. If you've looked at the inside of that submarine, would you venture to say is probably maybe 50 square feet at best?
It's not much. I saw a video of it.
And then they have the little bathroom in the front where you pull the curtain and
it wasn't even a bathroom. It was a
box.
Hospital piss jug.
Yeah, and man, I saw from what I'm hearing from BBC and from New York Post, just posted about an hour ago. So they've got what they believe to be 30 hours left of air left in this thing. And, I am beyond. First of all, did you catch what the name of the submersible is?
Titan, right?
The Titan. Okay, so if I'm exploring the Titanic, I don't want to have anything. I don't want to be going down on anything that has the Titanic name in it. I don't. But this thing that they went down in, they said it takes 4 hours to go down and 4 hours to come back up, because I guess of all the, what do they call it? You can get the bends or whatever it is if you surface too quickly, and the pressure on the outside of your skin versus the pressure on the outside of the boat and all this other. But some of the BBC or New York Post released the 5 people who were aboard this submarine. It was a British billionaire who had actually went up on one of what's his name's spaceships. Why am I forgetting the name of?
Bezos.
Yeah, no. The guy,
the
Twitter guy,
Musk?
Huh?
Musk?
Yeah, he's been up on
he's
been up on one of Elon Musk's ships. One of Pakistan's wealthiest men, and then a retired commander in the French Navy who actually led the first expedition to the Titanic ship. They said the vessel lost contact with the support ship on Sunday, an hour and 45 minutes into descending to the wreckage, and they had made it 12th, so it's 375 miles off the coast of Newfoundland in the North Atlantic. Even in this time of year, the temperature in that water is not, it's not warm. And you're already, they lost track of them after they were like at 12,500 feet. So,
That's a long way down.
Well, and so one of the guys, so this one guy, Hamish Harding, is among the missing. He's a British billionaire. He actually went with Buzz Aldrin to the South Pole. Holy cow!
You guys are some adrenaline junkies, huh?
Well, yeah. So he said that he was on his third Ocean Gate expedition. So Ocean Gate is that's who gives these tours. And I guess you guys have heard that this is a $250,000 ticket to go down on one of these things.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
And then you have, okay, I'm going to try it. Shanzada and Suleiman Dawood.
Good enough.
Yeah. Dawood is 48. His son's 19. He's the vice chairman of Pakistani energy manufacturing and tech conglomerate Engro Corporation. Then Paul Henri Nargeolet, who's an experienced deep sea diver. Nargeolet, 77, is also aboard. He led the first expedition to the Titanic wreckage in 1987. So this thing, okay. So here's the dimension. This thing's 22 foot long and 9.5 foot tall. That's how big this submersible is. And it looks like you're pretty much right, Sean. It looks like a Logitech. It's little.
Yeah, he's got the little remote control.
Oh,
yeah, I saw
God.
that.
And he's like, this is how we control the whole thing.
Well, yeah.
I'm reading.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, guys.
What were you going to say, Travis?
I'm reading this thing here about this ship. So I'm just going to read this part of this article. This blows my mind. It's unclear what kind of internet connection was available on the ship, but OceanGate tweeted last week its 2023 expeditions relied on Starlink satellite internet services to communicate. Without GPS, the Titan is guided underwater via text messages sent by the surface ship above them. However, it might not work unless the sub is directly beneath the ship. So right off the bat, their navigation is sketchy right there. It's based off text message. That blows my mind right there. Yeah. It is not equipped with an emergency locator beacon that might help rescuers find it, either on the ocean floor or once it's risen to the surface. The submarine is also bolted from the outside, so those in it would need rescuers to get them out. They have to unscrew the bolts from the outside. So this thing just sounds like a death trap to me. Like there seems like there was no contingency plan if something was to go wrong. I mean, the fact that I don't know, that's just crazy. Couldn't pay me $200.
For those who are watching us live, here's the picture of the ship. I love it. Said 5-inch thick outer wall, 5-inch thick outer walls. It's powered by 4 electric thrusters, 2 vertical, 2 horizontal. There's no seats for the passengers, so you're sitting. According to this thing here, you're sitting, crisscross applesauce there. And then the rear section is unmanned and contains oxygen tanks and electronics. So,
how would they even rescue them? Like, pick them up with a rope or something? Send down a rope? Because you're not unbolting that thing on the underwater.
Well, and
I'm not going to bring an impact driver.
Yeah. Here's the thing. So last night, Piers Morgan on CNN International did an interview with a reporter who went down on one of these things before, and he was on there when if you lose, like you said, Travis, if you lose your internet connection, you lose all your GPS and all your because your GPS is basically funneled in from that internet connection above. And so if you get off course, and so they were lost for like 3 hours, and then they found themselves. They found the ship. They got to the Titanic, and then the ship somehow got wedged in between the screws, in between the props of the Titanic, and could not maneuver in and out. And so for 3 hours, they're sitting there with no contact to the surface. And this reporter's like, "Okay, this is the end for me." And this guy, and he broke down in this interview on Pierce Morgan. And to me, I mean, if you're going to go out, I don't know. I don't paying 250. I don't want to see that Titanic that bad. I really don't.
I mean, when you're that far underneath water, everything's pitch black. Can you imagine that just being in like a little metal box underneath water and it's just pitch black around you? There's nothing. There's nothing around you. That is just insane.
I don't know. Sean, when you start making your millions, are you going to be lining up to go down on the Titanic for the Titanic?
No. I fucking hate water.
Yeah.
I hate water. Okay, I absolutely hate it. This is one of those things where I'm happy to say it'll never be me. It'll absolutely never, ever, ever, ever be me. I don't know. I'm not the subject matter expert very clearly, but there's like a lot of different safety precautions that you would think would be taken into consideration when it comes to things like this. Like the only person that I know, at least that's been like publicly like successful that went down by themselves was like James Cameron. James Cameron did like a dive, like the lowest dive ever, and it was on this like tiny compact little thing.
And he had to lay on his belly too when he operated that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's like certain levels of thrill and junky shit that I'll do, but that is not one of them. I am totally content with going to the Titanic Museum, watching the movie, and looking at the pictures online. I have no need to actually go to the Titanic. I mean, it just sucks. That's just it's one of those things that's like, yeah, it's a cool story that could be told, but at the end of the day, like the risk reward of going 2 miles underneath the ocean in what looks like a lunchbox is just not
for $250,000.
Not ever going to be on my docket.
For $250,000. I mean,
do you think they'll get their money back?
That's the highest.
I hope this company's ready to get sued to oblivion. They're going to get sued so bad.
I guarantee. But don't you think that they're?
Well, I'm pretty sure that like the owner of the company was in the sub, like he was the one navigating operating it. Yeah, the guy that did that. Like,
but I mean, like probably they signed a liability waivers. Like,
they had to.
They
100%.
Yeah.
But even then, the family is going to sue for like loss of, I don't know. It's a shitty situation. I don't know.
In doing so, and I tell you what, and I'm not a Titanic junkie. I mean, I will. You said the movie, Sean. That's 3 hours of my life that I will never get back. I've never attempted to rewatch that movie ever, nor have I ever flipped through the channels and said, "Hey, I'll watch Titanic for a few minutes." But in doing some research, and wait, hold on a second. I need to debut this too while I'm at it. So I'll go ahead and put this on. So here you go.
Hey.
The tinfoil hat.
I gotta get mine made.
My wife made this for me from after last week, but after last week, so she made me a tinfoil hat so I could have that for just such an emergency. But that during the Cold War, when they found the Titanic, actually the guy who found the Titanic was being supposedly being paid by the CIA to look for two downed nuclear Russian subs that had crashed on the bottom of the sea of the North Atlantic. And he found the subs, and it was, according to this guy's, It was, oops, hey, we also found the Titanic too while we were at it. So, I thought that was, I was like, really? Really? How come I've never heard this story before? But I thought that was kind of interesting. And now this guy is,
What a coincidence, considering like how giant the ocean is. Of all the spots, you happen to find the Titanic. That's crazy to me.
well, and don't you think, don't,
Pretty specific.
well, yeah, I mean, you have to, I want to know though, why don't, why, and this is something that we should ask our good old buddy Matt Furcus about, since he's a submarine guy. I believe he's a submarine guy, right, Sean? Or is Furcus a submarine guy, or is he a regular?
I feel like he's been on a sub before, but I think he's just on a warship now.
But I mean, some of those guys who, and I'm trying to think who the other. We have another Clopton grad who I'm trying to think who it is right now. I know for a fact he came and visited me after he came out. He had spent 6 months under the Arctic cap or something like that on one of those nuclear subs. And I'm like, okay, how do you communicate with the surface? And, it's like communication. You would think that the technology to make this ship, well, I shouldn't say that you've got your Logitech and you're just going down on a game controller, but wouldn't you think that this thing would have a powerful enough? I mean, I guess I don't understand how underwater things work to where you can't. I mean, does communication to radio waves not work the same way underwater as they do above? Because I mean,
I doubt it.
Well, you've got planes that travel 30,000. I mean, your commercial airliners are 30,000 feet up in the air. You're six.
I mean, just my experience with radio frequency, you'll have interference just in pure daylight. So I can only imagine what underwater
would do. Yeah.
Yeah. It can't be good. I mean, obviously, we're hearing how they were losing Wi-Fi and you're barely able to get text messages to each other. So, I mean, what does that tell you?
I would want, again, another piece of technology. Give me 13,000 feet worth of tether rope or something that attaches me to the ship.
Yeah,
there's
like so many things that could have. I feel like that just could have prevented this.
Oh.
Like just a rope, like you said, just like a goods. Like,
give me a tether. Give me a.
I don't know.
I'm got the old Titanic here in the background here, but I'm kind of like Sean. I'm like, there's no way that you could say, hey, let's go on this thing. But that was the other thing that reporter was saying in his interview last night. He said, if they lost contact an hour and a half and they departed on Sunday, he said there's a good chance and this guy said this last night. The guy says, like, there's a good chance they're already dead because we were. I mean, he said when we were lost for 3 hours, when we reestablished radio contact, he said if they lost an hour and a half into the, they may already be dead, and that's sad to say that.
But like, what's confusing was like, okay, they lost contact. Like, we obviously don't know what happened, so I'm just speculating here. Like, was it a loss of like, could they not navigate it at all? Like, could they not just go straight up? Like, as soon as they like, okay, we don't have anything, let's just go to the surface. Did they not have that ability? Or like, is there a Logitech controller like, go to crab on them? I don't know.
Well, and that's the thing. Because you're on your normal submarines, what you have is my working understanding, and it's a very basic understanding of how submarines work. When you have your what they call those ballast tubes that fill up with air to raise it up and lower it. When you look at, and I'm actually looking back at, and they show these ballast tubes that are on this submarine. It's a ballast tube that basically, as I'm looking at it, it looks like PVC pipe. I mean, something that resembles PVC pipe. And, the ones that are on these submarines are, probably 6 to 8 inches wide. And when you release the pressure on those and you can go, I mean, your descent is going to be, it's going to be not just like bullet fast, but I'm looking at these tiny little pipes, and I'm not thinking that there's that if they release the pressure on these pipes, that it would. Who knows? I To me, it's
I can only speculate.
well, there's a lot of.
Unfortunately, 5 people might have probably lost their lives for it. It's terrible.
And well, what was kind of bad was the guy Harding, who was the last text message that he sent out said, "Hey, we're headed out to his wife." He's like, "Hey, we're headed out tomorrow. It looks good. The weather's been bad, so they've been waiting for this." So, you know, that's another thing that you don't know what we're looking at here is that what kind of conditions did they take when they were getting inside this thing? I mean, was it rough seas? Was it war? So anyway,
Can only speculate.
Before we move on, I just have to read this one last thing that's just interesting to know. Mike Reiss, a producer and writer for The Simpsons, boarded the vessel known as the Titan last summer. He said that passengers were required to sign a waiver that mentioned death 3 times on the first page.
Jesus.
Yeah. So, I mean...
Oh, that's a whole bunch of no for me. That is a whole bunch of no.
Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah. So this is... As the submersible made its way to the Titanic, Mr. Reiss said it was carried off course by underwater currents. The compass was acting very weird, he recalled, and the team knew only that they were about 500 yards from where they should have been. Still, the Titan, which could spend only 3 hours on the ocean floor, managed to arrive at the wreck with roughly 20 minutes to spare for what Mr. Reiss called a quick photo op. He was able to see the sunken ship through the porthole, which he described as the size of a washing machine window. The wreck was the biggest thing in the world, he said, but you're in such darkness you just don't know where it is going to be. So again, this vessel has made successful trips to the Titanic before, but like just mentioned there, it pretty much accidentally found the Titanic and was it sounds like lucky to get up. I mean, I don't know. Couldn't be me, and like you said, Travis, it's unfortunate because about 5 people, lost their lives, and for what? Instagram?
It's crazy. It seems like, I don't know the full history of both, but it seems like space travel is becoming more safer than underwater expeditions.
And what
I remember I'm wondering to see which of these space billionaires are able to actually do the first legit commercial kind of flight into space, because I know there's a couple. Obviously Elon's been working at it for a while.
Elon's more for trying to get he's trying to go moon and work with NASA.
Right, but
Bezos is trying to do is Blue Origin, which is commercialization of flights up in.
And the guy,
there's another company too, but I know
Virgin Mobile.
Yes,
that's the one. Yeah, Virgin Galactic, I think, or something like that.
Virgin Atlantic. That's exactly what
Atlantic.
Oh
yeah.
God! He's got that beard on. He's got a beard, white hair.
I want to say it's Richard Madden, but I don't think.
No,
that's
it's
right.
Richard. I think it's. Oh goodness gracious!
But I'm pretty sure it's Richard.
Travis.
Yeah, Richard. It's Richard. Virgin Galactic is a spaceflight company founded by Richard Branson.
Virgin
Group conglomerate, which contains 11% stake. Okay, blah blah blah.
He record
yes, I know they're doing commercialization of it, and so is Blue Origin.
Goodness gracious!
I will not be signing up for that one. Would you sign up to go to Mars? Would you want to be the first people to go and have Mars?
I on my top 10 list of favorite movies, there's 2 movies about Mars, and it's Mission to Mars and The Martian. Two of my favorite in my top 10 favorite movies, and both of them, have there's just. It's not like say, hey, we're going to point a ship, go up into space, and point towards Mars. The whole thing of you have to leave within a certain, because a lot of this is 95% of it is done by gravity. And which way your propulsion, and you're going to avoid hitting, whatever. And there's too many. To me, there's too many variables that there's a risk in space travel.
They got to time it. they got to make it through like the great filter and like just crazy. And then like they have to plan like a flight after that to get them enough food to last them. There's got to be like 2 flights. It's crazy. It's crazy that that's even a discussion.
There's too much. There's
I'm all
too
for it though. That's cool.
well. I can't.
I wouldn't do it, but I support what he's trying to do.
I
Why
to,
not? It's like our greatest president ever said it. We're not going to the moon because it's how did
when
JFK
Kennedy said
say
it,
it? Yeah, we're going to the moon because it's hot or something like that. However,
yeah,
in his
yeah,
Kennedy accent.
yeah. I don't. To me, there's. It takes a different, like you said. I mean, the guys who go to. So one of my. I'll end with this story. So I had a friend. I had a college guy who I went to college with. The guy was. I mean, the guy is just an IT, just one of the brainiacs of brainiacs. And this guy he worked for the whoever it is that does all the exploration down on Antarctica, and so he did one 6 month season down in Antarctica. And he said, "Hey, I'm in this film on Amazon." I was like, "Really?" I said, "How long are you in it for?" He said, "Oh, about a 16th of a second you can see me." He said, "But he said you ought to watch this documentary on Antarctica." And and he was down there. I was like, "What was that like?" He said, "Miserable." He said it was great money. He said it was some of the best money that he's ever made in his life. He said, "But there's no way I'm ever going back again." He said, and it just takes a special kind of somebody just to say, "Hey, I went to Antarctica. I've been to Antarctica. I've done." But again, there's that risk. Why go? Because
Got to flex on social media to get those
It's like
likes.
it's like the people that continue to go to like Mount Everest. Like
why?
there's just a good chance you're gonna die, or a decent chance you can die, like because allegedly, I guess like the line to get up Mount Everest, like when they do tours, like it's so long that there's like some people lose oxygen and they suffocate
Just waiting for
waiting
their chance
to
to go
make it
up.
to the peak. Yeah, and I know that like it's not as bad as like what some of the online things will say, but for the longest time it was quite literally part of the map. Like to go up Everest was marked by uh, dead bodies that had just been there. There was a guy, I think his name was like Red Boots or Orange Boots. Um, hold on, dead body, and that's just like yeah, Green Boots. It was quite literally just this guy, Swang Paljor, who was dead, and he had been in a spot. He's since been removed, but for the longest time was quite literally just like, that's a dead guy. That's along the way, and if you see him, you're going the right way. And there have been like multiple different
Oh,
explorers that's happened to, but now like Everest, if you've seen photos of Everest recently, like there's just hundreds of littered like tents just on this mountain peak because people will get up there and time is too short. They don't have time to pack their stuff up before oxygen runs out or their window to get to the peak. So they just ditch the stuff and they get to the top and they leave. So it's becoming like a junkyard.
You know what's crazy with that? And I know we're getting off topic, but I wanted to share the story because it goes off of that. Mark White, he's a retired alpinist now, but there's a story they had like it was a 4 man, no, 3 guys. Yeah, it was 3 guys. They were on a expedition. I forget what mountains they were in. I think they were in the Himalayas, and they started like a storm came in they weren't expecting, and they were like it turned into like an emergency. And one guy was having oxygen sickness, the other guy was having hypothermia, and he said the only reason they survived, he's like they lost like in the storm they lost like their rope and shit, and like he's like that was it. Like I thought we were gonna die. The only reason they survived is like, mind you, they're going on like 2 days, no sleep, barely any food, like they're like trying to figure out how to get off this mountain. The only reason they survived is 'cause they found a dead crew that had a bag with a rope that tried to
oh,
climb it before, and they took the dead crew's rope, and that's how they got there. Those alpinists, dude, are a different breed. It is insane what those guys do.
I wonder how much those little guys, those little, what are they? The Nepal, the Nepalese men who the Sherpas or whatever they're called that go up those.
Yeah.
Those guys
Yeah.
got to be making bank to be able to do that.
And you know that the whole time they're just like, man, these fucking idiots. Just,
Yeah, it's just every day for them.
yeah, they're like
9 to 5.
All right, well, if you fucking crackers are start to phase out while we're up there, I hope you know, like, I got shit to do tomorrow, so I'm going back. Like, we're on my time.
TikTok, let's go.
I don't know what's worse between like thinking of trying to go to space, trying to go to the bottom of the ocean, trying to go climb Mount Everest, or going to Antarctica. I think all of them just sound like Sean. And what do you guys do? Of those four, what's your option?
What are my choices again?
Commercial flight into space.
Mm-hmm.
Go see the Titanic.
Mm-mm.
Go to Antarctica. Or
Antarctica is probably definitely the safest bet.
I'll just shart my pants and sit in my bathroom. Thank you. I'd say go into space. I mean, to me, if I in this
you think that's safer than going to Antarctica?
Yes.
You're
gonna be the teacher on the Challenger.
They have like tourists. They have like tourist boats that go down there for people, right? Like it's a commercial.
Yeah, well, you know, I follow, and it's Bryson.
More power to you, man.
Bryson got me to following Dude Perfect about 3 years ago, and I've been following him forever. And Dude Perfect they got a sponsor to send one of their guys up on one of Musk's, thing. I mean, it looked to me legit, and I mean, they've apparently got it down to a science to where it's not as much of a risk, I guess. I don't know. If I'm going to choose, no,
man. I just feel like I've seen way too many space shuttles blow up mid-flight.
Yeah.
For me to just be like, I don't know. It's the same thing though. It's like that. Do you guys remember when Red Bull did that thing where that guy got on that space balloon?
Yep.
And then just free dove out of the thing into the atmosphere.
Awesome.
Like,
we watched
Travis,
that.
would you do that?
Would I do that? I don't know.
Or were you Ranger?
No, but I didn't do anything.
But he was airborne.
He was there. You were airborne.
That's totally different.
You are falling out of a perfectly good airplane.
There's a difference between 1,200 feet and 30,000 feet.
1,200 feet is still 1,200 feet of absolutely fucking nut, is what it is.
Oh my God.
Let's try to make the great segue from that into the other cluster fudge that happened this week, which was the Secretary of State going to try to patch things up with our brethren across the sea over there in China. And man, did we come out smelling like a pile of turds on this one. The whole idea, this was our secretary, this guy's name, our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Just as a side note, Sean says things not an alien. God.
Yeah, not an alien.
But did you ever watch that Mel Brooks movie called Robin Hood Men in Tights?
No, are you saying he looks like one of the characters?
No, but there's a character in this movie whose name is Abe Blinken. ABE and then Blinken. And so they called him Blink. And he says, they're always like, "Hey, Blinken, did you say Abe Lincoln?" No, but see, when I see this guy, Anthony Blinken, and I'm just like,
it makes you think of that.
Yeah. So if I just go with Abe Blinken, just first. But anyway, so our Secretary of State, that's an ADHD moment right there. But our Secretary of State, he meets on Monday with a Chinese president to quote unquote stabilize deteriorated Chinese ties. And his main goal was, hey, let's get our militaries back on the same page. And Xi Jinping, who is Chinese president's like, okay, no, we're not ready for that yet. And they're not ready to go back, but some of the other things that was discussed was Taiwan. And Taiwan, we have never been a huge fan of the independence of Taiwan, unlike some other oceanic countries like Australia, who has I think we've been talking about that since we started the podcast, right?
This has been a topic a few times now.
How Australia is ready to go to Taiwan's aid. But basically, Blinken came out. When was that? Did you send that to us yesterday or today, Travis? That was today.
Right? It was today.
That basically, Blinken basically just said, we're gonna, hands off, and they can do whatever. The Chinese can do whatever they want to the Taiwanese, and we're trying our hardest to really mend this relationship with China, especially in the face of what's going on in the Ukraine, especially with what's going on, in basically the China's building a relationship with these OPEC nations, with Brazil, with Saudi Arabia, and China is making itself into a major player in the game as far as a, I guess we can go ahead and use the term superpower, right? Is that too far out of stance to use the term superpower when it comes to China now?
No, absolutely not. They're one of the big players in the game.
And so, and we've talked about this before on this podcast about how China has tried to, kind of broker a deal between Russia and the Ukraine, more favoring Russia than the Ukraine. And during this whole ordeal, we've been more spectators than anything else. Of course, I guess it was, I forgot, Sean or Travis sent out a tweet right before our podcast tonight that, we overcalculated, or what was it, Sean, that was over $62 billion. How did that, what was the
6.2? They $6.2 billion was they accidentally sent, they had an unaccounted $6.2 billion that was sent to the Ukraine.
And that was reported by the Pentagon, I guess this afternoon. I read some of the comments underneath that. It's like, if you're an accountant for a major company and you have a 6.2 billion, you're getting fired the next day. But the whole move with China over Taiwan is kind of the thing that's overshadowing this whole meeting. And Taiwan has been a question mark. And I'll throw my history teacher hat on just for a brief moment, and then I'll let the guys discuss this. For those who don't know the history of Taiwan has always kind of been this, I guess the best way to describe it is kind of like a redheaded stepchild in the South China Sea. Okay. And it is during World War II, it was taken over by the Japanese. It was occupied by the Japanese. After World War II was over, we signed a treaty. I believe it was called the Treaty of San Francisco, that basically, we're going to allow this to be handed over to the Chinese, and we're going to do the quote unquote de-Japanization of this island, and we're going to educate these people, and we're going to stand by them. And this was under, and basically at the time you had both Mao Zedong, who had fought the Japanese in China during World War II, and you also had Chiang Kai-shek, who was the quote-unquote leader of China at the time. After World War II is over, so now you have Communist Mao and you have Chiang Kai-shek. Well, we're standing by Chiang Kai-shek, even though this guy was the biggest douchebag that he was hard on his people, known for genocide and killing people and all this stuff, but we stood by him because hey, he's not communist. And when the Chinese Revolution occurred in 1940, as the tensions, everything happened in 1947 through 1950 in China, Chiang Kai-shek basically flees to Taiwan, where he basically sets up this group called it's called the KMT, the Kuomintang. Sean, keep your comments to yourself. The Kuomintang was this. Basically, they called themselves the Republic of China. Okay, and they considered themselves, we are the rightfully recognized people of China. We should be the only ones that should be recognized. And this went on, during the Cold War. We really didn't recognize the People's Republic of China, Communist China, as the proper, they were the enemy. And that went on until about, I think it was 1972, when Nixon went to China. And then at that point, the UN started having friendly relationships and having friendly discussions with China. And then what ends up happening then, Chiang Kai-shek says, okay, if anybody who allies or works with China, there's no friend of ours. And so at that point, Taiwan had pretty much cut themselves off from the rest of the world until Chiang Kai-shek's death in 1975. 1975, then they turned it over to his son and this other guy. And then then you have, and I'm not going to go into all this, but there's a series of tensions between, there are these little skirmishes between China and Taiwan, and the Taiwanese Navy had blockaded Chinese ports, and they had all these problems. Fast forward to where you have now a Taiwanese elected. They had their first democratic elections in I think it was 1996, and now they are quote unquote democracy. But this KMT, who originally started the government in Taiwan, is still a party within the Taiwanese government. So there is not to say that Taiwan is totally innocent of anything that could happen, but I mean they don't have a very clean past. And what's bad about this is, the people of, if you go to Taiwan or go to Taipei, the capital city of Taiwan, you're going to find friendly people. You're going to find, and they're just people trying to live their life. And every time, like the last American, strangely enough, the last American diplomat American official that visited Taiwan, anyone? Nancy Pelosi in 2022.
That's right.
Okay, and if you guys remember, when she visited, the People's Republic of China did test missile launches that went over Taiwan and landed on the other side, pulled a little North Korea action on them there, and just kind of reminded them, hey, we're still. And so there are political parties within Taiwan that want to unite, that are friendly towards uniting back with China. But yet, by this time now, you've had 2-3 generations of Taiwanese people who are like, hey, we like this independent stuff, and we don't. I mean, they call themselves Taiwanese people, but they're Chinese. I mean, that's just all there is to it. And so, as I look at this, what I titled tonight's episode, the comparable life of the U.S. and the Titanic. Are we a country now? I mean, with Blinken going to China, what kind of setup is this? I mean, are we? And I know that people are going to be mad. I probably won't put this one out on our reels this week. But I mean, are we kind of losing face in the world community, and China's kind of gaining face, or what do you guys perceive here?
I don't necessarily think it's. I mean, we kind of had that discussion with the Ukraine thing about like when the Chinese president went and talked to Putin and was kind of talking about how they were going to make a peacekeeping deal, which obviously that never happened. But I think with this, and we were talking about this before the show started, V, was I had read an article where Blinken, how is it Blinkton or Blinken?
Blinken. It's like Abe Lincoln,
okay,
but just take off the
okay,
Abe.
okay. He also made the comments. One, he was talking about like he went into the interview with low expectations, and it kind of seemed a little optimistic. So there's a lot of work to be done between U.S. and China relations, and we have the U.S. also saying, and he said clearly, the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence, which I've kind of did some Googling while you were talking, and which is funny because like all of my like normal Google stuff was like everything recent saying the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence. But when I went to DuckDuckGo, I got some more interesting things, and some of it was saying like it's kind of been like the U.S. has been kind of vague. We wouldn't directly say we didn't support Taiwan independence, but we would say that we don't oppose it either. And they would say things like, I think Biden made a comment in 2021. It's like, look, it's Taiwan independence is up to Taiwan, and he had stated, I think, and what that means exactly, I don't really know. But it wasn't as clear. We're being more like clear about our stance now, which to me it seems like we're kind of backtracking a little bit. But even now, because what was it, 2022? Biden said it. He was in Japan, and he said that if China was to invade Taiwan militarily, the U.S. would intervene. Remember that? That was like a year ago.
Yes.
So now we're saying this. So Blinken says very clearly that the U.S. does not support Taiwan independence. And then I was telling you, I guess Biden was at a charity event in California. I don't know if this was today or yesterday, but he called.
I read that article today.
But then he calls the president of China a dictator. And it's like, here we are talking about trying to improve relations. And now, granted, I'm not a fan of China's president by any means, but like, it doesn't seem to align with what we're trying to do. On one hand, you're telling them not to, we're trying to work out I'm assuming we're trying to work out of a deal with Taiwan, and yet we're calling their president a dictator. That doesn't really help our case with relations very well, name calling. But Blinken also made a comment that the U.S. would be is deeply concerned about Chinese military in Cuba. What I think is trying to happen, I think we're trying to make a deal where maybe there's like a treaty or some backdoor agreement where basically China pulls any military personnel they have out of Cuba, or they agree not to keep moving forward with it, whatever it's going on. And in return, we let them do whatever they please with Taiwan. Because it's only a matter of time. Taiwan is going to get invaded. I mean, I've been reading articles for the past 2 years now about how China's increasing their military presence. They're increasing their drills. They're pushing the boundaries more and more and more with these drills. It's only a matter of time. And I can tell you right now, Australia is not going to do anything about it unless the U.S. gets involved. Japan's not going to do anything about it unless the U.S. gets involved. Nobody is going to make a move on China taking Taiwan unless the U.S. gets involved. I do not see the U.S. getting involved militarily in this. Well, and quite frankly, I don't think we can afford to.
Well, and that's why I asked, two things.
Should we?
Okay, so two things I want to bring up here. Number one, so the poll question this week was, what do you believe should be the number one priority of the United States government going forward into the future? I put on world peace, solving the opioid crisis, securing our borders, the economy, term limits, and our good friend Alex Elson added space exploration, strangely enough. 62% of the survey went to the economy. And this is an age old, and my second point is this is an age old discussion. Okay? How much of a presence should the United States have with the rest of the world? We became seriously involved in world affairs, starting with, we kind of kept our nose clean of world affairs off and on, but we really started getting our hands dirty with the presidency of Teddy Roosevelt. McKinley, kind of the Spanish-American War over Cuba. Okay. And then Teddy Roosevelt comes out there and he introduces this thing called the Roosevelt Corollary to another document that basically was called the Monroe Doctrine. Anything in the Western Hemisphere, okay, is business is European nations stay out, okay, and the Roosevelt Corollary pretty much said, hey, we're going to come to the aid of anybody in the Western Hemisphere, okay. Then fast forward to Truman, okay. The Truman Doctrine said any subjugated people in the world, we are going to anybody who's under influence or under attack from an outside force, we will come to their aid. And of course, that was during the Cold War. And so pretty much from Truman on, it has been the policy of the United States for us to stick our nose in places where we think that we need to have a dog in the fight, whether it's a territorial or alliances or anything else like that. Of course, there's other places that we're not involved, that we should be involved. My go-to has always been, I've said on this podcast before, the mess that is going on in the Sudan. That you want to talk about news that's not talked about is what's going on in the Sudan and how there is mass genocide and how there are teenage girls who are taken from their schools and who are exploited and who are trafficked and by the Sudanese government, and we're not, but yet here we are.
They have evacuations going on, but that's really it.
Yeah. Why do we why are this thing we're trying to kiss China's butt. We've always tried to kiss China's butt. Why? 1.2 billion people can't be wrong. I think the underlying factor, we want to keep peace with them, but at the same time it comes down to one thing and one thing only in my book, and that's money. Money, money, money. It is the largest trade market that we have in the world. I've said this over and over, and students who listen to the podcast get tired of me saying this. When I went to China, in my time in China, if you took all the Chinese writing off the sign, and when we were in Beijing, you would have felt like you were in New York City, because it was Nike this and Pepsi and Coca-Cola and Walmart and Pizza Hut and KFC, and we have such a economic, I think more than anything else, we can say military and we can say all this other stuff, but I honestly believe we don't want to lose our economic ties with China, and that's what it's all about to me. I may be wrong. What do you guys think?
And I wish I understood more of the whole Trump and China trade war better. I wish I understood that and knew what was going on with that, but yeah, I don't think we can necessarily afford to lose that. But Sean, what's your take on it?
No, you had kind of hit on it a little bit ago. I think that the walk back from the White House is weird. Just with what has been said in the past, but I mean, you're right. It's going to boil down to money, and I think there's a couple different factors that are going into this. Like, if the Ukrainian-Russian conflict wasn't happening right now, do I think that this would have been the decision from the White House? Probably not.
Probably not. No, that's a good point.
Great point.
I think that there's a couple of different things, and it's tough because here's the thing. I don't want war with anybody. Nowhere, no way, no how. The United States, we do unfortunately play the part as the world police. That's kind of like our job, where, wouldn't it just be nice to just be one of these neutral countries for once, where there's a bunch of shit happening in all your neighbors' backyards, and guess what? You're like, shit's good behind my fence, so I don't really care.
Can we afford to do that?
Fortunately, we don't do that, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong that we do that. I understand why we do, and I think that's one of the most noble parts about the United States. However, this is a tough one. Like, if I'm not mistaken, Taiwan is part of the big deal why we wanted to keep them where they were without China dipping their toe with their military was because, if I'm not mistaken, it has something to do with the chips that are for cell phones, right? They
Right.
are vastly
For everything, yeah.
For the
yes,
for automobiles and everything.
correct. So if that becomes a you know owned by China, what does that mean for us moving forward? If they um, cut off that kind of trade. Now, again, China has a lot to lose with us too, and I think that's a big reason why we haven't butted heads for such a long time. Um, a lot, it's funny to kind of see like the arguments whenever our political leaders from China and the U.S. get in the same room together. And what each of them are bitching and complaining to one another about, but it's interesting. We're gonna see. I'm pretty sure that, believe it or not, the one that was able to kind of solidify this over everybody was Tom Cruise. Once he realized that he wasn't going to get his IMAX theaters thanks to Oppenheimer, he was like, "Hey, got to get in good with the Chinese government so that Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1 can get the screen time on the IMAX that it deserves." So we have the Cruisinator to thank.
Cruise made a deal with. I found out that the part of the reason why Top Gun Maverick didn't get a lot more Academy nods was because he had one of his biggest funders was a Russian oligarch, I was like, oh, well, there you go.
To make Top Gun.
I'm sorry to say I like that movie, and my wife hates that I like that movie, but that's okay. But hey, before we sign off tonight, I want to thank again. Welcome to our new followers. We gained, I believe, 5 or 6 new followers this week. Again, our reels this week were great. Thank you. I mean, we had over 2,000 views this week on our reels between Facebook and TikTok. Thank you to everybody who's. We've had some. We did have some negative comments this week, but you don't. Well, I guess one of the rules is when you get out there, you're not supposed to read the comments, and so I guess stay away from the comment section and don't read those and all that other fun stuff. I would like to say my personal goal in this endeavor is by the end of this year, I would like to have 1,000 followers on TikTok, so we can live stream to TikTok and really broaden our audience. I've said that before, and
it's gonna happen.
And this is gonna be one of my reels for this week, and I'm gonna leave our TikTok address on there too. That to our 1,000th TikTok follower, whoever that may be, will get Voice of Reason merch, and I am in the process of working on an online store. So we will be, and I'm talking with our I don't want to say supplier. It makes it sound like a drug cartel or something.
Is drugs. It is drugs. We are selling drugs.
Definitely a supplier
online.
The supply chain.
Wink, wink.
We are the Mark Cuban of fentanyl. Cost plus plugs. Cost plus plugs is the name.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yep. There we go. Well, I tell you what. This is. Sorry for my internet hiccups. We had a little bit of hiccup. I'll have. Those who listen to us on Spotify, you won't notice a thing. You're good to go. But
this is why we need more TikTok followers, guys, so we can get the best internet possible.
Hey, that's probably by the time we get our 1,000th follower on TikTok, that'll be the time when, hey, we need to ban TikTok, and there it is. So
yeah, they'll ban it again.
That'll be our goal right there.
Bastards.
I know. Well,
you do.
Sean, why don't you give us all of our goodbyes, and we'll call
Of course. Yeah, no, as always, gentlemen, it's wonderful to talk to you guys. This week has been super crazy for me, and it continues to roll in. I hope that both of you guys have a pretty good week ahead of you. And to our listeners, again, thank you so much. As V says, we are coming a very long way. In the last couple of weeks, we've had a couple dozen extra followers, and as the views and everything start to rack up, that means more for us. And there's a lot of good stuff happening. in our own lives and careers on our side that are really going to help benefit this show, and a show that for our listeners that have been here from day one, we appreciate you guys sticking around and continuing to listen to us three idiots babble on about a whole lot of nothing. And so we do appreciate it. And to our new listeners, again, if you're like, man, this shit can get pretty rocky, we'll just promise it is going to be smooth sailing on the other side before too long. We are so thankful for you guys. Be a friend, tell a friend. You know where to find us on all the social media platforms, wherever you get your podcast, right here on YouTube and Facebook Live. Thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart, and we will talk to you next week.
Right.